Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joyofbaking.com. Today we're going to make gingerbread cookies, and this is what they look like. This is a really nice spicy cookie, crisp edges, soft and chewy in the center, and then we are going to decorate it with a glaze. So to start, if you have an electric stand mixer like I have here, use your paddle attachment, or you could use a hand mixer, or really you could just mix it in a large bowl with a wooden spoon. So you will need a half a cup, 113 grams of butter. I'm using unsalted. I prefer the flavor, but you can use salted here. Have it at room temperature. And then I'm just going to beat that just to soften it, get it nice and smooth. Okay, and next I'm going to add a half a cup, which is 100 grams of granulated white sugar. And I'm going to beat this on medium-high speed until it gets all mixed together and we get some air in there so it's nice and light and fluffy. I would like 2-3 minutes. Okay, so I'm just going to scrape down the sides and the bottom of the bowl. Do that as often as you need to make sure everything gets mixed together. And now I'm going to add 1 large egg and have that at room temperature. Just going to beat that in. Okay, scrape that again. And next, we're going to add molasses, gingerbread, molasses, need to have that. So I'm using unsulfured molasses. You will need 2/3 of a cup, which is 160 milliliters. Now, whenever you're measuring out something really sticky like molasses, what I do is you can either lightly like oil the inside of your measuring cup, or I just use one of those nonstick sprays and spray it, and that way it'll come out much easier. You know, if you have honey, that's another thing, or corn syrup, anything like that, it's a good idea. Spray your measuring cup first. Okay, just going to beat that in. Okay. Yeah, that gives us that really nice gingerbread color. So now, for our dry ingredients, in a separate bowl, I have 3 cups, which is 390 grams of all-purpose flour. You may know that as plain flour. To that, I am going to add 3/4 of a teaspoon, 3 grams of baking soda, 1/4 of a teaspoon, 1 gram of salt. I like to use the kosher salt. I find it's a little milder flavor than the table salt, but really either one, whatever you have in the house. And then for our spices, I'm adding 2 teaspoons of ground ginger. That'll give us a nice bit of heat there. 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, a 1/4 of a teaspoon of ground cloves, and 1/4 of a teaspoon of grated nutmeg. Of course, you know, you could vary that, but that gives you a really nice bit of a spicy gingerbread cookie. And I'm just got a whisk. You could sift these all together, but I'm just using a whisk here. Okay, that looks good. So I'm just going to add that to our wet ingredients. And then you'll want to start your mixer on low speed. You don't want that flour coming up in your face. And then just beat it until everything's all mixed together. Okay, I'm just going to scrape everything down here, make sure everything on the bottom there is getting mixed in. Okay. Just a little more. Okay, that looks good. We are done. So move everything out of the way here. batter. So now what we're going to do is divide this in half because we got a lot of batter here. Okay. It's quite thick. Let's put a little bit of flour down. Now, just kind of put it in a ball. I'm just going to roughly just eyeball this and cut it in half. It really doesn't matter. Don't have to be too precise here. Put that to the side. So now, I mean, there's a couple ways of doing this. You could wrap this up and chill it and then roll it out. But since it's pretty firm, I'm going to roll it out right now and kind of save us a little time. So I'd like to take 2 pieces of parchment paper. I am going to put like just a little bit of flour on my parchment paper and just kind of spread that out a little. Put a little flour on the top. And then another piece of parchment paper. You could use wax paper for this. And then I'm going to roll it out to, I like my gingerbread cookies about 1/4 of an inch. That's a little less than half a centimeter. I find that's a good thickness. If you like your gingerbread really crisp, I like mine kind of crisp on the edges, soft and chewy in the center. So I'm rolling it to 1/4 of an inch. If you prefer crisp all the way through your gingerbread cookies, then you could roll it a little thinner than that even. So I will leave that up to you. So just move it around. Your roll, and then what you want an even thickness. So what I do is you just kind of put your hand across there, and you can kind of tell if it's all the same thickness. Like my edges are a little thicker, I can feel that. And then we're going to do cutout cookies here. So we will have to chill this. Now, I find it takes at least 2 hours, probably longer than that, to really chill this. Oftentimes what I do is chill it overnight. And actually you can leave this in the fridge like a couple days before you cut it out. So it's one of those things that you can do ahead of time. So that looks pretty good. Let's go check that. Yeah. As you can see, that's about 1/4 of an inch. So now what I'm going to do, I just have a baking sheet. Put that. I'm going to put that in the fridge to chill. I'm going to roll out my other one, and when we come back, we will start cutting out our cookies. So once your dough is completely chilled, then we're ready to cut out our cookies. So take a baking sheet, line it with a piece of parchment paper, or you could just lightly butter it or spray it with a nonstick spray. And then whatever size or whatever shape cookie cutter you want to use. And what I do is just put it in some flour and then start cutting out your cookies. Like so. And then what I do is just that, and you probably need like a knife or an offset spatula. It does kind of stick a little. Whoop. And lift it up and put it on your baking sheet. I've already done some, so you don't have to watch me do all of them. So just do that, and then because there's, your cookie cutter was floured, what I do is just take a little pastry brush and then just brush off any excess flour. So as you can see, I've done funny little pumpkin or big pumpkin cookies, but you could use any time of the year, any shape. So since we worked the dough, and if you have any scraps, what you're going to have to do is gather them all up and re-roll them, probably chill it again. So, but at this point, they are a little soft. So what we're going to do is preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. And while our oven is preheating, I'm going to put these back into the refrigerator so they'll firm up, because we don't want them to spread and lose their shape while they bake. So chilling will help that. And when we come back, we will bake our cookies. So we're now ready to bake our cookies. Now, I like my gingerbreads kind of the outside to be kind of crispy and the centers of the cookie kind of soft and chewy. So for that, if you have large cookies like I have here, I find about 12 to 14 minutes. Smaller ones about 8 to 10 minutes. So what you're looking for is the outside of the cookie will be firm to the touch, and they'll be just starting to brown around the edges, but the centers will still be a little soft. So for this size, about 12 to 14 minutes. Okay, our gingerbread cookies are done. As you can see, they're starting to brown around the edges. So I put the pan on a wire rack. You want to let them cool in the pan for, probably 3-4 minutes to firm up, because they're very soft. And then you can transfer them on the wire rack. And then we have to let them cool completely before we put the glaze on top. So that's what I'm going to do. And when we come back, we will finish off our gingerbread cookies. So now for our glaze, you will need, just in a small bowl, 1 cup, 120 grams of confectioner's sugar. You may know that as powdered or icing sugar, and sift it to get rid of all those lumps. And to that, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of light corn syrup. You could use golden syrup here. And that's going to give us that nice shiny glaze. And then, now, you will need between 1 and 2 tablespoons of water. So I'm just going to add 1 and maybe a half. It's easier to add more water than to take it away, but if you do find like when you do this and it's a little runny, you can just add some more powdered sugar. So either way, I'm just gonna stir this up. You could, if you wanted to, use a royal icing. This is a lot similar, but I find it easier, and I like the taste better. Plus, it's something different. This is the icing I always used with my kids when they were young, and they would help me. I find it's a very forgiving glaze to work with, especially with the kids. So, that looks good. Pretty easy. So what I'm going to do is just take a little, because if you can see here, I have the orange and then I have the little green tips. So, and you don't need very much for that, so I'll just put a little in there. And then I got some orange. I'm using the gel. You can use whatever you have. Like I said, if you weren't doing pumpkins, you can, or even just leaving it white is pretty good. And looks good. I like to work with a small amount of icing so it doesn't dry out and get all kind of, kind of crust on it. So that's why you can always make another batch. It's pretty easy to make. So that looks good. I'm going to go with that. So you just take your cookie. I'm just doing it with a spoon. Just take a bit. If you do find it runs too much, you could always just stir in. Sometimes it's hard to get that right consistency, so you go, oh, it's a little runny, then just put stir a little more powdered sugar in there. So just put it to the edges. I mean, you could get your piping bag out, but for this, I find it just as easy to use my spoon. Now this will take several hours to dry at room temperature. You know, I often just leave them out overnight. So there, I'm just kind of, there. So, whoop, got my finger. Now, if it runs or it's not too even, you can just take your finger and kind of just go around and make it all nice and pretty. So then, I got a little, I do that tip. So I put a little green in here. If you're using these gel, I find using a toothpick and then have it on a cloth because stuff, you want to dye everything. So that looks good. Oh, mine's running a little there. So I'm just going to go with my finger, like I said, maybe put a little too much on. Like that. And then I just got a little knife. You could use a paintbrush. You had a small paintbrush for this. And just kind of dab it in there. Like so. And there you have it. Fuss as much as you want, or as little. So that looks, yes, I think I put a little too much, but just kind of go check them like that, and you're done. I find, like I said, I let them sit overnight to dry. So let's try one. I'm going to try one of these because I made them before, yesterday. Oh, I like that. Nice spicy flavor, nice and chewy. The glaze even adds to it. And these will, you know, stay quite a few days, well wrapped. Try them. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joyofbaking.com.